Welcome to the Country Club podcast, but not the kind with dress codes and tea times. This is a different kind of country club, one where country living meets real estate, community, and adventure. I'm your host, Diana Cassidy-Bush, and your trusted guide to navigating life beyond the city limits. Whether you're looking to plant roots in a small town, find the perfect recreational escape, or make smart investments in rural properties, this podcast is for you. Because in real estate and in life, it's more than just about buying property. It's about making the right plan, seizing opportunities, and building a future you love. Welcome to the Country Club, where home, community, and opportunity come together. Welcome back to the Country Club podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today's episode feels especially personal. I'm sitting down with Kara Enright of Enright Cattle Company. And before we talk business, branding, or innovation, we're talking roots. Kara and I both grew up on family farms. Agriculture wasn't just an industry where we're from, it was the backbone of our community. Over the last couple of decades, we've seen that landscape shift. Fewer farming families, larger operations, hobby farms emerging, and yet at the same time, we've seen innovation, diversification, and opportunity like never before. Kara has built something I deeply admire, a woman-led family farm that has evolved into a recognized beef brand, expanded into retail, hospitality, value-added products, and most recently, locally made tallow products right here in Tweed. This conversation is about legacy, leadership, reinvention, and what's possible in agriculture when you're willing to think differently. Kara, welcome to the Country Club podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor. As I was preparing for the episode this morning, I always do last touches in the morning before. Did I see that you were prepping for a TV interview or a
I was
show?
actually in Ottawa just with one of our customers. They were videoing some footage just for using, I believe, mainly on their social media and on their website and that sort of thing. But they're great supporters of local farmers, and they wanted to have some of their suppliers, so some of their farmers, there as part of their video and promo. So yes, I was
Sweet.
there doing that sort of thing. So it was kind of fun.
I guess it's the theme of your week.
Yes, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Can't wait to see how that turns out. So we'll just jump right in and get growing. Haha. So, Kara, let's start at the beginning. In your opinion, what did farming look like when we were growing up?
When we were growing up, I would say that a lot of your friends and the people around you were farmers or children of farmers or, very closely related to farmers. So I feel like there was more farmers and smaller farms, of course. There was a lot of dairy farms in our area in particular. I guess very much a way of life for many people, and something that was pretty common, I would say,
Yeah,
and nowadays it's, I would say, maybe less common and has definitely changed a bit. But farming was how we were raised. So like we were part of 4-H. We took part in 4-H. We were active with the animals. We were planting gardens. We were doing all that sort of thing, and we did a little bit more of our producing our own food. Even my own family. If I look back to when I was growing up, my grandmother had a massive garden. She did a lot of preserving. I was raised on a dairy farm, so she made butter for our family every year. Like we'd make a massive amount of butter a couple times a year and put that in the freezer. So if I look at what we do now, yes, we have a garden. I don't do as much preserving, purely out of lack of time, I would
yeah,
say. And then we have all of our own beef, and the kids have chicken and eggs and turkey, but I would say we have probably stopped producing as much of our own food, even as farmers. So, like, we
yeah,
will buy more of our canned tomatoes versus like canning them ourselves. So,
yeah.
when they're in season, I have fresh tomatoes, but I would say that we probably rely on others for some of those other things more than what we did in the past.
Yes. What did being part of a farming family teach you early on?
It taught me a very strong work ethic. I would say that's like the main thing that it taught me. It was responsibility and learning how to care for animals and also learning how to grow your own food. So I guess you would say independence, really. Like
Mhm.
we were taught how to survive from the land, really. If you needed to, you could survive just on the stuff that you produced in the land around you.
Do you think agriculture is disappearing or just transforming right now?
I don't think it's disappearing. I think it's just changing. So it used to be, like I said, a lot of smaller farms. Every family seemed to have a connection to a farm in some way, shape, or form, or in somehow they
Mhm.
were had something to do with producing some part of their own food. But I would say now that it's just changing. So farms are becoming bigger and more, I would say, less diversified, so more concentrated on a specific produce that they're producing, and, they're learning how to be very efficient at that. So their costs of producing that, are being streamlined so that they and that's probably why they're producing less products. So they're just learning how to if it's beef that they're producing or if it's carrots or whatever it is, they're learning how to do that really well and really efficiently, and to do that and to be able to implement those efficiencies, they are having to be larger. And so the smaller farms are becoming less popular.
Right. I've always admired you as a woman leading a farm, especially in an industry traditionally led by men. What has that experience been like for you?
I guess I originally didn't really think of it too much until I was at a conference one day and I can't remember where it was, but we were heading back to the hotel and just in an elevator with other people in the hotel, not from the conference. And they just started a conversation like, "Oh, what do you do?" or something. And I said, "Oh, I'm a farmer." And he just kind of looked at me and he was like, "You don't look like a traditional farmer." And I thought, well, that's an odd thing to say. And so, anyways, then I kind of carried on like, yeah, I guess that's how, the majority of the population does not see a woman as being a farmer. And so I would say from there, it really just encouraged me to prove that, I could do it just as well as any man could,
Yeah.
if not better, so like
Yes.
that just basically gave me drive to go
Yeah.
forward. But
A little
I wouldn't say
fuel
that
for the fire.
I wouldn't say that
Yeah.
it limited me at all. It kind of motivated me.
Yeah. Awesome. At what point did you realize you didn't want to just raise cattle, that you wanted to build a brand?
What really motivated us to build a brand was to be able to build a business that was sustainable in agriculture. So we have a limited land base and we had limited resources. Daryl and I, bought our farm right out of university. So being able to expand and be very big to keep up with the times, as I was just previously mentioning, was definitely a challenge because we didn't have a lot of resources to put into buying a lot of land and just getting very big really quickly. But we still wanted to farm. So we found that we had to figure out a way to make the business be sustainable and profitable. And so in order to do that, we decided to start direct marketing. And that of course entailed building a brand. And by direct marketing, it allowed us to make the business make money, but not to have to be really big in order to survive. So that was the motivation behind it so that we could have a business that was sustainable, that would be something that the next generation could potentially take on if that was something they chose to do.
Awesome. I think your strategy of creating a recognizable beef brand has been brilliant in many ways. Have things unfolded the way that you envisioned as far as the beef brand, or have things surprised you along the way with that?
As far as the beef brand, we originally saw ourselves as attending like farmers markets. That's how we got started, is attending farmers markets and really trying to sell directly to the consumer that way. My plan at the beginning, it did not entail doing as much B2B business as we do, but it quickly evolved as we were attending farmers markets, and just with the variability there, if it rained, people didn't come out, or it was really difficult to display your product being beef at a farmer's
Yeah.
market. It's not like this lovely pile of apples or big bushel baskets of sweet corn. It has to be in a freezer. You're in a mobile situation, so it's not like you can have this really beautiful display case of meat. So that was a challenge for us, and so it took us a bit to kind of figure out how to really market it at the farmers markets, but we also quickly learned that we really needed to drive the volume. So at that time, it was quite hard to get into farmers markets. I'm not sure about right now, but they only wanted so many beef vendors and so many pork vendors and so on, so that everybody had enough customers kind of to survive, which is fine. And so they had already established a lot of those vendors, so we were able to get into a couple of them, but we weren't getting enough volume to support our overall plan. We really needed to be selling more beef directly. And that's when, I guess, we considered other options. And at the time, I still wasn't considering like restaurants and that sort of thing. But one of the guys that came to us at the farmer's market vendor, he was actually a chef from a restaurant up the road. And
Okay.
so I didn't know, it was unannounced to myself. I think he bought some sirloins actually, and he was telling me about how he was gonna prepare them and for dinner that night, and he was, like, very into how he was preparing it and was very detailed, and I thought, "Wow, I'd like to have dinner at your house tonight." But anyways, carried on, and after he left, the vendor beside me said, "Do you know who that was?" And I said, "No, I have no idea, just don't know." And she said, "Well, that's the chef, from Le Chat Noir." And so that was a restaurant in Kingston, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." I'm like, "So our beef's gonna be served at that restaurant tonight." I'm like, "That's very interesting." So anyways, I went home and I was like, "Guess what? Guess what? Our beef's gonna be at Chat Noir." And so that was kind of exciting and fun. And so back at the market the next week, and here comes Derek back down again. And he was like, "Oh, that beef was fantastic. Can I get more?" I'm like, "Of course you can get more. Like, what do you want and how
Yeah.
much?" So
Yeah.
it just kind of evolved from there. As that kind of came on our horizon, then I was like, well, if he wants beef, then potentially others do as well. And so from there, I guess our plan evolved to including both direct to consumer and to other businesses. And so that ultimately helped us achieve the volume that we were looking to move to make our plan sustainable.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been fantastic to see like how those partnerships have grown, and it's in my opinion it's allowed them to kind of co-brand alongside you and even build your brand even more as they attract people to their business, it attracts more people to yours, so that's fantastic. So tell us about the purse line, the leather purse line that you developed using hides for your own cattle. Where did that idea come from?
I guess that started when we were talking about how we would like to improve our brand recognition at the different restaurants that we were supplying at the time. And all along, our philosophy has been to utilize as much of the animal as possible. That included like organs that were not as highly in demand for human consumption. They were going to like gourmet pet shops where they were making pet treats and that sort of thing. And of course, we use the bones and stuff, but it was about using as much as possible. And we were talking about how could we improve our branding at different restaurants. And we were actually speaking about their menus because one of the restaurants had asked, could we put a little bit of a profile in our menu just about your farm and your beef. And so I was like, yeah, sure, that'd be fine. And so I was talking to our marketing team about it, and like, it'd be kind of cool if we were on like the back, just like stamped our logo or whatever on the menu. And then we were talking about what does their menu look like and that sort of thing. When that discussion kind of evolved into, well, it's leather, and we were like, well, wouldn't it be so cool if the leather was actually from one of our cows. Literally, that's what started it. It was kind of this pie in the sky idea of like, well, yeah, that'd be really awesome if, but it was something that just kind of resonated with me and just sat in the back of my mind where I was thinking like that would be really cool if the opportunity came up that I could create this value chain to do that. It just evolved from there, and next thing you know, I was by coincidence that I bumped into somebody who was getting some, I think they were getting some deer hides tanned or something, and I was like, "Oh, where do you have that done?" And then I got the contact information for the tannery, and we were able to reach out to them and see if we could set up, to have some of our hides tanned just as a test run kind of thing. And so we did that. And then from there, we were able to find some leather makers and have some different products created to see what really worked with the leather and what didn't work. And so yeah, it's just been ever evolving. We ended up um really finding that the bags worked really nice with our leather because it's quite soft. It's like a glove tanning. So the bags were nice. We've done a whole bunch of different accessories, but the most recent thing that we did was we found a place in Quebec actually that was manufacturing boots, and so we had winter boots for ladies and men, a first line trial run done of it, and they're stunning. I have a pair that I wear all the time, but unfortunately the manufacturer ended up closing. They had a bunch of their staff retiring, and they just couldn't find the skilled resources like this to fill those people that were making the
Yeah.
boots. So anyhow, that was a bit disappointing because I was super excited to
Yeah.
add like to our bag of lines also, some footwear, but we're still continuing to look and see what else could be made here in Canada with our leather, but that's how it all evolved. It was just basically a wouldn't that be so cool if, and then just kind of keeping the idea
Yeah.
open like maybe this will all come together, and eventually it did. So
Yeah. Awesome. The farm store, the repurposed granary silo that your store's in. Can you talk about that vision and how that kind of came to be?
yeah, so once we had the leather then and we started promoting it and putting it on the website, people of course wanted to come and see it because they wanted to touch, feel, see the size and shape, and it's just nice to like try it on and kind of check it out first. So I found that a lot of people were wanting to come to the farm to see the leather. Well, where am I displaying the leather? Literally in the beginning, I would like clear out the living room. So like all the kids' toys and all the crap like over in a corner. And then I'd be like setting up bags, like hanging them off of like coat racks and displaying them on my couches and tables. Like it was ridiculous. But pull out all the bags because there was a bunch of different styles, set them up, someone would come, look at them, buy, leave, pack it all back up again, resume normal living room practices. So I
Yeah.
was like, this isn't really working. And so then when we started having different tours come and we would set it up in the barn. And in the haymow, it does display beautifully because it
I bet.
is just so authentic. But it's a working barn. So we can't leave it there. So like people, if we have a tour coming, okay, we'd set it all up. They'd come see it was awesome, looked good. We'd be like making sure that the cats weren't like climbing on it or something like that, like whatever's happening. And so do that, pack it all back up again, clean it off if it got like any dust on it or whatever, and put it away. And so again, that only works when, the barnyard is dry, hasn't rained, it's not muddy and whatever. And so I was like, okay, again, not super practical, but was better than my living room. So then I said to Gerald, we really need a space where we can just have it like permanently set up. So I'm not pulling it in and out all the time and it just displays nicely, and it doesn't have to be fancy, just like a small spot somewhere where we can set that up. And so we were just again trying to like reuse things around the farm or whatever. And so we had the grain bin and that we were using, and I was like, well, maybe we could just set up the grain bin, pour like a concrete pad, set it up on that, and like out front, and then we could just cut the front door open where you normally would go in and out, but make it like an actual full to the ground door, and set it up in there. And he was like, yeah, okay, we could do that. Well, then we quickly discovered that the grain bins, they like make some condensation inside of them, and of course you can't have like dampness on the leather, it will mold, so that
Right.
becomes a mess. And so we're like, okay, well, we're going to have to insulate it then, just so that it doesn't have any condensation inside. So next thing you know, we're insulating it. And I'm like, well, if you're insulating it with spray foam, like then you're going to have to cover it with something because it can't just be this ugly, spray foam. And so then he's like, well, what do you want it covered with? I'm like, okay, well, let's do like, the nice whitewashed boards or whatever. And so then we do that. I'm like, well, if you're cutting the door in, you might as well cut a couple windows just so that we have, more natural light. And he's like, okay, fine. I'm like, well, and if we're insulating it, we might as well have a heat source. So then in the winter, we're not freezing. So then we install the wood stove. And my neighbor was tearing down a barn. So we're like, oh, it'd be cool if we had like a couple nice big barn beams across in there, to kind of bring the haymow look into the grain bin. So next thing you know, we're putting that in, and it just kept evolving until all of a sudden it went from like a very rustic grain bin into like literally a beautiful kind of like something that you could Airbnb.
Yeah.
So that's how that all came. It was very much like uh,
Evolution.
yes, an evolution. And Daryl was like, "What did I sign up for?" So
Yeah, well, if you would have, like, had that vision right from the beginning, you probably would have said no, so
yeah, he definitely would have said, "I'm not doing that." So
yeah,
that's how that came about, but it works really nice. It's such
yeah,
a,
it's beautiful. Yeah,
yeah, it's unique, so that's cool.
yes, very unique, very farm-oriented, it fits the space perfectly.
Mhm.
What about your crop dinners? Can you kinda talk about how that started and why people love it so much?
Yes, so the dinner in the crop circle, I guess I'm trying to think of how that started. I think it was we were just trying to determine an event that we could host on the farm, which allowed us to basically give our customers a chance to experience the farm and taste our beef and tour the farm. And so we had been hosting lots of different tours, but because we had this, network of chefs that we were working with that were like readily available and they loved the idea of cooking on the farm, we decided just to create an event based on that being like the main feature. So once a year we would host this dinner in a crop circle. It basically started with, just a tour of the farm. And then we literally created like a crop circle in the middle of our cornfield each year. So it was it is a lot of work because you have to
Yeah,
recreate the circle and the whole thing every year. But people loved it. So they would come do the tour. They follow like a winding path through to the circle. And when they get in the circle, we partnered up with like local winery, local brewery, and a different chef every year kind of thing. And we'd have like the fires going. We partnered with Tweed and Company Theater. They provided live entertainment, and so guests arrived and they had some drinks. They were enjoying the entertainment, and then they were watching the chefs prepare dinner over the fire. And then dinner would be served. In between dinner, we'd run a mini fashion show. So we partnered with Chris James at Kingston. They would supply the outfits and pair it up with like our leather accessories. So the models would be wearing our leather bags as well, and just do like a fun fashion show in between the main course and dessert, which also act as giving the chefs time to prepare the next course. And it was just a fun little like piece that we added in there. And then they would enjoy dessert and they would visit the grain bin to see what all we had there. And then the evening would end. So it's a great event. It takes a lot of work and time, but people seem to really enjoy it. It's also very weather dependent because it's
yeah.
literally out in the middle of the field. So I remember there was one year where we had to postpone it because there was like torrential downpouring. It was really high winds. It was just, yeah. But we hosted it the next day. So that all worked out. But
Well, that's good. Yeah, a lot of work, but what a way to pull, the community together and all of what you do under like in one event. So that's very cool. Next, let's talk about Wilson's Blueberry Farm and acquiring that. I assume you do a blueberry dessert at your Crop
Have the
circle
crop
dinner.
circle. Yes, we do. Yeah. So Wilson's organic blueberries was something that was not obviously part of our plan, but the opportunity came up where it was for sale, and it was actually a when it came for sale originally from Wilson's, I actually called one of my colleagues that I had worked with, and I knew his son had a lot of blueberries in Western Ontario. I said, you should tell James that Wilson's is for sale. They should buy it. Because ultimately, I just wanted it to stay in blueberries because our area, as you
Right,
know, doesn't have a lot of fruit production. And I thought
right.
it's a great little patch. I'm like, we should keep that here. It's great for the locals to come pick some fresh berries, for the kids to come in. It's a great family activity, and then the blueberries are delicious. So I'm like, ultimately just really wanted that to stay in production. And so I said, tell James they should come and buy Wilson's. And he was like, oh, I'll mention it to him. And so he did. So I was like, awesome. So, he bought Wilson's, and they have a young family in Western Ontario. So they would come down not very often, but they thought this will be a great little like getaway. They park their camper when they come down there. So they kind of, have a little camping and look after pruning and whatever on the blueberries. And they had locals hired that did the day-to-day stuff. Anyway, so that went on for, I don't know, maybe 3 years or something. But ultimately they were like, we can't manage. They weren't able to get down as much. It was just too far. And so James called and was like, Kara, do you want to buy a blueberry farm? I was like, no, I wanted you to buy it.
Yeah.
So anyways, from there we were like, well, maybe. So Daryl and I had talked about it, and we're like, we know nothing about growing blueberries, like zero. So, but we really just wanted it to stay, like I said, in blueberries and have, another product in the area grown. So we decided that we would buy it and learn about blueberries. So that's how that all started. And Mr. Wilson, John, he was great to like come and help us just figure out what had to be done and everything. Like literally we had to learn everything. It was a huge learning curve. So, and we're
Yeah,
still
I
learning.
bet.
We just went to the fruit and vegetable conference in Niagara Falls last week to learn more about it. So every year we try to attend that, and there's great speakers. We've made some connections in the blueberry industry. So we have a
Right.
few other people that we're able to call on and ask questions to, or find out how we should be doing different things, which is great. But ultimately our goal is just to provide that keep that patch going, so it provides another food production in the area, and a spot for people to come and pick berries and bring their family and enjoy that, and yeah, just keep food security going here. So
Yeah, awesome. Kara, thanks so much for sharing your story and taking us back to where it all began. What I love about the first part of the conversation is that it really grounds us. It reminds us that behind every business, every brand, every pivot, there's a foundation, there's a history, and there's a lived experience. And in agriculture, especially, those roots run deep. This conversation with Kara Enright was just too good to fit into a single episode, so we're turning it into a two-part series. In part two, we're diving into what Kara and her husband Daryl have built, how Enright Cattle Company evolved from a traditional farming operation into a diversified, recognized brand. And we're talking about innovation, entrepreneurship, and what the future of agriculture can look like when you're willing to think differently. Make sure you come back for part two. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If it resonated with you, be sure to follow on the podcast, share with someone who's been thinking about making a change, or reach out. I'd love to connect. Until next time, live well, stay connected, and keep creating your version of the good life. Thanks for joining me at the Country Club today. I hope our conversation has helped guide your journey. Whether you're looking to plant roots in a small town, find the perfect recreational escape, or invest in rural properties, every situation is unique, and I'm here if you need a trusted resource on your real estate journey. As always, consult with a qualified professional before making any investment decisions. I'm Diana Cassidy-Bush, and I'll see you next time with more conversations about thriving beyond the city limits. Click the follow button for the Country Club podcast with Diana Cassidy-Bush on your favorite podcast platform, and let's start building your future together.